Welcome to the No Fear podcast and the No Fear live broadcast. I'm your host, Tony Lauer. If you're into mindset training, performance psychology, personal development, you'll dig this new format. No Fear Live is a unique broadcast, and it's different from the No Fear podcast. We decided to go live because we wanted to create the opportunity to interact with people like you all over the world, where anyone can log in and ask questions, and in some cases, you may even get invited into the show. The great thing about the live broadcast is that it's much more personal for the listener. That's you. Remember, self-defense isn't always about a confrontation with someone else. The first and most important fight is winning the one inside your head. Whenever I watch that, I sit there, I pause after, I go, who is this guy? Like, I want to listen to this show.
Yeah, it's a good intro.
It's a good intro.
It is a really good intro.
Thank you, man. Marcus, how are you, buddy?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I think so it's funny because I think the best part of this talk happened before we started recording.
Yeah, well, maybe.
That's our show, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
So this is live, and I guess we usually banter for a few seconds, let people log in, but we're going to start talking right away as if it's not live.
Okay.
For people who don't know you, and again, like I explained earlier, we record it and then we repurpose it in all the classic Apple, Spotify, and all that stuff.
Right.
For people who don't know you, which is unbelievable, who does not know you, what's your elevator speech when someone goes, what do you do? How do you explain yourself to people?
I educate and empower people to not live in fear.
Okay, cool. How do you do that?
By letting them finding the things that like with regards to self-defense. Right. With regards to self-defense, finding the things that they're apprehensive about or just straight afraid, and giving them some options and some solutions that are at their level, so that they can just not be afraid, filled with anxiety and fear. And that elevator speech has moved into a few different directions, because when we last spoke, things have changed, and like my evolutions are becoming more of one thing and less of another. Like I care less about what movement you're going to do to create an opportunity for escape. I just want you to be able to do a movement, and that movement is relative to where you are in this stage of your life, right, or your situation.
Did you always? Because I know that not to. I mean, the name of this podcast is the No Fear podcast, obviously, and I know that you consumed a lot of my material, and we had some really good talks. We actually got to meet finally live at a gig I was doing in Arizona, and it was cool to have you in that course. Did this pivot? Was it inspired?
Yep, 100%. Inspired, and I would go so far as to say, like, I had things in my head, things that just were a mess, like just all sorts of like puzzle pieces. And then you came out with No Fear, and then your conversations, and all of a sudden, I wouldn't say the pieces came together, but it just let my brain say, okay, there's a path that you should pretty much investigate. And I think it's really important, Marcus, that you just pay attention to what's being said, let go of all the bullshit that's in your head, and just listen, learn, and expound on it from there. And so, yeah, and that's why I give props to No Fear and everything you've been doing 100%, because of the fact that it's altered how I educate people.
Amazing.
My verbiage, I had been fighting rules and regulations for some time, must do this or must do that. And, let's be honest, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but the only thing you must do, and you don't even have to do that, is survive the altercation. But if you're willing to sit there and put forth some effort, obviously you want to survive the altercation. So my job is just to sit there and give you some kind of knowledge to do that. And that's where the no fear is, obviously it's a massive thing in my life. And something you said about how, and this is what really resonated with me. You said before exams, tests, belt tests or anything, you would get like nauseous and you would feel sick to your stomach and you would feel like really, really not so good. And I was like, wow, okay, get out of my head. And then, the other things about Mike Tyson being nervous and stuff, that was good. But when you said that, it was like, oh, okay, first of all, I'm not
crazy,
abnormal, yeah. Right? There's something to that. And that really was, the floodgates were opened after that. It gave me a huge amount of permission to be just who I am and understand that fear is a big thing and we need to sit there and try to figure out solutions for it.
That's amazing and a deeper answer than I had anticipated, because before meeting you, your content was like your T-shirt be a nightmare, for the bad guy, and it was very physical, bravado. Mm-hmm. Let's fuck people up. And then I always wrestled with, I've got all this physical skill. Mm-hmm. Why do I have doubt? And why am I hesitating? Yeah. And then as I began training law enforcement, military, and everyone's facade looks like the facade, and then you would either see body cam, helmet cam, or an eyewitness report where people are going, yeah, but I didn't do what I thought I was going to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was, I remember one organization I was training that, they were downrange and a bomb went off and they were all in a meeting at an embassy. And the point of contact that had organized the training stateside with me like months earlier, because I would say to them, you don't know what you're going to do until it happens. Yeah. What you want to do is reverse engineer the scenario and then also Socratically discuss the emotional, psychological, physical impact, not just the throw, punch, block, it's physical, which is the big mistake I think most martial art, reality-based self-defense systems make, is spend most of their time on the technical versus the emotional, psychological, anyway, as the mind navigates the body, as you know. But this guy called me, Marcus. I didn't know a suicide bomber had detonated. I hadn't picked up the news yet. And this guy calls me from overseas and he goes, I just wanted to tell you that everything you said in the class happened 100%. Mm. And I said, okay, cool. But it was like weird. I was like, why is he saying it as in happened? Like I couldn't pick up his tense because I didn't know, hadn't seen the news yet. He goes, guys that were always saying, I'll do this, were under desks, friggin' couldn't get up, couldn't move, were yelling people to evacuate. And I'm like, his name was Leo. I'm like, Leo, what are you talking about? He goes, didn't you hear? And then when he explained, I was like, holy shit. But imagine and I'm not saying this to toot my fucking horn. The guy called me, he wanted to call me after a bomb went off. I'm hoping he called his mom first and said, I'm okay. But part of me is this, I knew we were going to have a fun talk. I didn't know what we were going to talk about, but it's so refreshing. And I want to say this to everybody listening. So I didn't let Marcus tell you about his background, but he's been in combative self-defense martial arts for 40 years now, over 30, 40 years. Yeah. The only, what's the accolade for Krav Maga in Israel? You're the only
non-Israeli. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And to get certified at that level through that particular association, and a lifetime of violence and fear and doing all this stuff. And what I want to talk about here, and it's something I was talking to Elisa pre-fight about, some of my frustration with, Marcus has been, doing stuff for 40 years. I've been doing stuff for 40 years in one day. I'm a little bit more experienced than he is. And how tall are you?
We're about the same height.
I think I'm 1 inch taller than that height. You bastard. So we joked actually that the last time we did our talk, we said we got to start our own show where it's just the two of us, like the old Sesame Street character,
Muppets.
The Muppets.
Yeah.
Two cantankerous, grumpy, old, washed up martial artists. Yeah. Bitch, look at that guy, that young guy. But anyways, what I want to point out here is your humility and integrity as a professional to go, this is, using your metaphor of pieces of the puzzle, this is a missing piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And what our research, so I would say 99% of the people that train with me and get affiliated and do our training are serious martial artists and self-defense practitioners who one day have an insight going, there's something missing. Mm-hmm. And for you, you had street background, you had work as a doorman. There's a quote we'll get into a little bit later where you got nicknamed the Tasmanian Devil with Tourette's. It's a fun one and probably needs no explanation when you hear that. You motherfucker, but the fact that you could lean into the training and realize that the insights that I was sharing created the connections in your brain that allowed you to go, what I've been saying, and you've heard it, everyone who's listening to me has heard it, the mind navigates the body. And if we can't clear fear, we can't then tell the neurological system, the neuromuscular system, he's open for a palm strike, drill him now. Mm-hmm. That signal speed to deploy that move can't happen if you're in the fear loop going, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck.
Yeah. So, well, and I wanted to bring this up because so when we were getting ready to do the show and he said, okay, come on. All of a sudden I went, I asked you about your teammate who's going to teach in Austin in March.
Yeah.
So I'm looking and I look at the dates. I look at it's a violent client interaction course that you teach.
Right.
So I'm looking at the dates and then I'm reading it. And at the very end of it, it says to complete the course, you have to teach 2 sections of it. And my guts went in a knot because I was like, well, if I take this course, I got to teach. And I got like, I panicked. I got afraid. And all of a sudden, like I'd already had all these epiphanies. I had one more epiphany. I'm like, here I am. This is what I do for a living, right? Of all the things on the planet that I should be comfortable with is I get information, I get educated, and then I teach it. That's what I do for a living. And Tony, I got freaked out. and then all of a sudden I was like, son of a bitch. And it was fantastic because of the fact that fear is, since you've opened this door in my brain, everything I do, or not, when I say everything, it's so dramatic, but so much of what I do and think and am about is about fear because I don't care about movements anymore. I really don't. Like, I don't give a rat's ass what technique you do as me or anybody I'm educating. I care about the fact that you're not allowing fear to stop you from having the freedoms of making whatever decision you want to make, because that's all I care about. If you decide, you make a decision, I'm afraid, I know I'm afraid, I'm going to get my ass kicked. And you decide to do that, or you decide to fight back, or whatever it is. The whole understanding of fear, like I realized I couldn't have known this information 20 years ago. And I say that because I would not have had I wouldn't have had the life experience to fully appreciate it. I might have gotten it and more than likely probably would have dismissed it.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, of course.
It's funny because I teach every week live in our garage gym. And almost everybody, we made a joke, like a Maxwell Smart Get Smart joke on Friday's class. And or no, on Friday. Tomorrow's Friday. This I'm seriously getting old, right? So on Wednesday's class, and I looked at the people logged in, and I made a joke. Elise is in the background here as our producer here, but I said Elise is probably the only one who doesn't know who Get Smart is, because everybody else was old like you and me, man.
Yeah.
And what's happening is it's the more mature self-defense practitioners and martial arts that are finally leaning into our research and our system, because you need to be at a certain age where you realize, and I make this joke all the time, had somebody, in my 60s now, had somebody come to me with this system in my 20s and said, do this, I'd have been like, hey, we got it.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, the 80s were my incubator period, and the 80s was when I started, I got the audio tape called Metacognition. I created the videotape Cerebral Self-Defense, The Mental Edge, the beginning of No Fear, and the cycle of behavior was actually the first iteration of it was 1985, 86.
Wow.
So if you get my panic attack tapes, which aren't available, I mean, so you can buy them somehow, but they were originally on VHS. The first tape in the 5 series, the first tape was called Cerebral Self-Defense, The Mental Edge, and it was a whole lecture on the importance of fear management. So I say this, I make fun of myself that I would have told people, fuck off, I got this in the 80s, but at the same time, I had started laying the foundation for this in the 80s.
That's well, one, you are old because you said VHS. I was about to say, what about beta?
So that was after, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No. So it was, I think one of the reasons why we love each other in a manly way, in a professional respect way. Oh shit! I should end this podcast now. But the reason there's this mutual respect is my whole thing when I was teaching people self-defense and scenarios, right? And I'm sure you heard the story somewhere, like what inspired my whole approach to scenario training was a student of mine getting his ass kicked. And I wrote an article on it where I said in there, his defeat hit me harder than the left hook that dropped him.
Yeah.
I was so angry with myself that I was responsible for his loss.
Yeah.
And like, that's more of a poet heart, which I think you have, which is why now, you go, okay, elbow him here, do this. And then something brought us together. And because I remember you, like, I almost had to get a restraining order on you after you did the No Fear thing, because it really helped, like, a lot of things in your brain crystallized.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. It's wonderful because I developed this fear management system because I was afraid, but I couldn't say I'm scared shitless, all the time, because people were like, they were going, could you teach me this? I was on a call yesterday with, not a couple of days ago. Do you know Coach Bob Lindsay? Do you know the name?
No, I don't.
He's a very, very famous, obviously retired now. He's 80, but he was a cop in Louisiana when JFK was assassinated.
Wow.
I mean, like, that's his history, and he's one of the most famous police trainers. And we were talking a couple of days ago, and he told me, and he was like a world-class judo, like Olympic level. When I met him at the first course he came to, he stood up and he put his left hand in his pocket. He pointed at me. He goes like this, like, don't get any closer. And out of his left pocket, he takes out a mouth guard and he puts it like from 15 feet out. And I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And he tells me, like, as a cop back in the day, he always kept a mouth guard in his pocket. Could you imagine you're about to get in a fight with a guy and he pulls a mouth guard out of his pocket?
Well,
like
you're
fucking done. You're like
two or three of the guys I worked with in the bars did the exact same thing. They would pull out their mouth guard and put it on because it's psychological advantage.
Oh my
which
God.
They weren't thinking of it back then as psychological. They were just didn't want to lose their teeth, so they put it in.
Right. But you're like,
it's a stopper.
Yeah. If you're the the drunk with the big mouth and you see that, you're like, okay. Yeah. Good de-escalation tactic. Is there any, can I buy you a drink?
Yeah.
But he said something that really impacted me. And he told it to me 20 years ago when we first met in the early 90s or 30 years ago, however long ago that was. And he said, when you really care, you will always be there for your students. Your students will always hear your voice in their head. And I couldn't, when I was teaching, Marcus, and I think that this is the same for you. Like I found like I was caring more about their safety than they did.
Yep.
And this is super nerdy. So I want your thoughts on this, but I'm kind of unpacking it live. I'd be like, why aren't they trying this harder? Why aren't they doing this harder? And what I realize now, and I didn't realize then, I thought they were just apathetic. I thought they were just whatever. I thought they were, but it was the noxious effect of fear of them visualizing, I can't pull this off. I'm not going to make this happen. This is really fucking heavy. And I'm thinking back now 40 years ago, dude, going like, why? I remember walking out of one class going, I'm going to bet on the bad guy if you continue to train like this. Why aren't you fucking working harder? Wow. And I'd storm back. And I just realized now, I got goosebumps right now.
Wow.
That if they were sitting there about to do a scenario in the same way you were reading the, violent client interdiction, or whatever the name of the course is, right? I should know the name. It's my company, but I don't. The violent client, blah, blah, blah. It's already in the course. And it says at the end, hey, to graduate this, you're going to have to teach a couple blocks. And you go, oh, fuck, I don't want to. And forgetting in the moment that you're a professional self-defense instructor.
Yeah.
What the hell could we ask you to do that you haven't done already? Right. In the same way that now, if I had looked at you and let's say I was grading you whether pass, fail based on body language, right after you read that, you failed.
Yep. Yeah. Ooh.
Right.
Ooh. Yeah.
It's freaky. I really need to meditate on this because I just realized like hundreds of clients of mine were sitting there not training because they were visualizing what the bad guy can do to them instead of what they must do to the bad guy.
I feel like I need to get off of this and get on the phone and apologize to everybody I yelled at because of my passionate.
Some of them needed yelling. It's what's your quote, man? What's Lisa? Do you have that the picture, the ketchup quote? Do we have that?
Oh, yeah. People are like balls of ketchup. You need to either stab or slap them to get moving. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Okay, pop that off there. Thank you. Yeah. No. So, but yeah, I realized that a lot of I didn't because I didn't have the insights and the capacity back then to articulate what I just did now. Mm-hmm. And this is really what spawned No Fear. Is I realized that the people who manage their fear manage to fight. Mm-hmm. And if you can't teach fear management, we can't teach physical tactics.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, we can, but
they won't be effective.
I mean, and I'd rather not generalize because there's lots of people that make shit work, but there's something in their character, in their upbringing that allows them to deploy the movement. But there's far more people. I agree with you in principle, philosophically. Hang on, I'm just reading this quote here from this guy, Gideon, Detention Center. Pop that up there so we can all read it together, Elisa. At my detention center, we have officers hired at 18 that haven't been in I'm assuming that's a typo, the verbal fight. I hate those verbal fights. Joking, Gideon, I know it's a typo. Verbal fight with their parents, let alone a street fight. When use of force is justified, they freeze like deer in headlights. De-escalation training has not taught these officers if you use force, you'll be fired. That's a horrible That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But crazy. Thanks for sharing that. And guys, if you're listening to this and you got questions or comments, pop them in there. Do you want to move on, or do you want to talk about that more? I could see that.
Well,
I
mean, it's a huge epiphany is the only word that's coming to my mind. And, you know, this subject is one that I would love to see starting at elementary schools and junior highs and highs, and marriage counseling, and like the subject that whole Be a Nightmare for Bad Guys, right? When it first started, people assumed that it was all about just self-defense, and it was in the very, very beginning. But immediately or months afterwards, it started really being about being a nightmare for the bad guys in my head, right? And everything that's fear-based in my head that stops me from forward growth. And I have utilized the fear management in every aspect, Tony, of my life. When I talk to people who are suicidal or that have nothing to do with violence, the not the principles, the subject, the meat and potatoes of no fear applies to every single aspect of our humanity as a species. Yeah. And so, I mean, we can move on, but I'm just telling you right now that the no fear, and this is not me blowing sunshine up your ass. This is from my heart. The no fear section of this part of my development in my life is something that I'm holding on to, and I just cannot get enough of it. I would love to see more Tony Blauer doing live no fear weekend workshops, because I'll be honest with you right now, I would sell plasma and bodily fluids to be able to attend as many of those as possible. That's not a bullshit. That is not a lie. It's, I make a joke about it, but it's that important, because just reading it online, I personally don't do well with online reading and stuff. I need I'm tactile in how I learn. I need to sit there and have you speak to me, and so I can hear it and smell it and all that other stuff. But I just don't think that people clue into how important this subject is, and it has so little to do with the violent aspects of things. That's the cherry on top. Like that's I understand you need a motivation to understand it, but it goes so much deeper than that. Anyways,
I appreciate that. We'll do the plasma, but you can keep the bodily fluids.
Yeah. Dang it.
No, that's heavy, and I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. This is, I don't know if you know this, but we got to get him on the show one of these days. Jeff DeTesso, psychologist out of Connecticut, Krav Maga instructor.
Okay.
He got certified in the Spear system. It's probably 6-7 years ago now, but I didn't know his background. And one of his, so he's professional, psychologist, therapist, and he started adapting not just the no fear cerebral self-defense, but also the other elements you were exposed to when we did the gig in Arizona, where it was a law enforcement gig where we talked about the 3 fights, specifically pre-fight, in-fight, post-fight, and the whole pre-fight of the mental health, resilience, mental fitness versus physical fitness, the whole psychology, and recognizing, I can get nerdy at the brain level and say, look, if you want to improve your signal speed, and that's your neuromuscular communication, it's not just practicing ki, because you need to send that message after you clear your fear if you're blocking a punch. So there's a definite relationship between imminent and immediate danger, me managing fear, and then deploying whatever, whether it's Krav or Jiu-Jitsu or Taekwondo or boxing or whatever. And I'm with you. In the 80s, I would tell people, I don't care how you punch. I care whether you can punch or not. Verbatim. That was one, like, if doubt creates hesitation, which it does, and unchecked hesitation will create procrastination. Well, if violence loves speed, being good at procrastinating is going to get your fucking nose broken or worse.
Yeah.
So I've always been pushing. I can explain the no fear from a tactical, like if I'm coaching a boxer or an MMA guy or an operator. Yeah. But what you're talking about, the subtext you're talking about families and education. I don't know if you know this, because we have a fun little banter online. If anyone watches our stories, we're back and forth, and they're generally they're but I've got a no fear kids program, a no fear family program, a no fear teams program. So I do stuff at a corporate level. I do stuff for families. I do stuff, and what it is. It's still the wireframe of what the no fear program is, which is recognizing can I recognize my change in physiology? Like when you described, oh shit, there's a test. Yeah. You described a change in physiology. Now, if you hadn't done the original no fear program or weren't investigating fear and the connection between parasympathetic, sympathetic, breathing, sweating, visualization, you might have gotten the knot in your stomach, closed the thing, and when I'm busy, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, right? Guaranteed. Yep.
And so this comes back to the biggest thing that no fear does for people is it improves their self-awareness. And if you improve your self-awareness, you improve your critical thinking. And if you improve your self-awareness and critical thinking, you improve your situational awareness, which affects the type of danger we're in, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's financial, whether it's health, or whether it's violence.
Yeah. Well, see, this is the second time that we've had a talk, and the first one you educated me in ways that I've made it clear that it's the only podcast I've been on where afterwards I had to sit there and be like, wow. And it took me weeks to fully unpack everything that happened on that. And I don't know who's online right now, but I doubt they can fully understand. And I doubt they can fully understand the important smacks in the face verbally you're giving people. Like, you're getting free lessons on this that people pay for. I just hope that it's not falling on deaf ears, because it is a game changer.
Thank you.
And really, and the worst part is I'll have some fucking retard sit there and be like, whoa, why don't you just suck Tony's ass a little more? I'm like, you retards just don't get it. I've been around some of the greatest human beings I could ever have asked for. And when I think about and this is why I just wish I could spend more time around you, because I want to be a sponge. And like you said, as soon as you started mentioning family, kids, stuff like I was just like, okay, well, where's a course on that? Where's a course on that? And I understand that these are private courses that you do for people, but if there's one thing the last 3 years has shown us, almost 3 years, is fear management is the only thing we are going to that's a must-have to continue forward in a mental and physical and emotional healthy way.
100%.
Right? And yeah. So I don't know. There you go.
No, thank you for that. And please blow more smoke up my ass and send me more compliments. I'm a little insecure these days. Listen, fear has been insanely weaponized in the last few years. And here's the thing. And it's funny, by the way, you can't say retard anymore. You're canceled.
Okay. They didn't obviously grow up in our time.
Right. The reality is, like, anybody who reacts like that, and this is like a thing with guys anyhow, like guys don't compliment each other, right? Guys don't. Yeah. And you can't fucking grow. I love finding quotes and maxims and saying things like one of my favorite quotes by Dan Millman: if you face just one opponent and you doubt yourself, you're outnumbered. And And I always, when I'm doing this live, like in a seminar, I go, first off, let me tell you why I hate this quote. Because I didn't fucking say it. And I'm pissed
Right.
off.
Yeah.
I'm pissed off that I can't make it better. Like it's just, that's the, as a, an amateur wordsmith, I write a fucking shit ton, and I say a lot of things that become quotes, and I work on that. It's part of what we do.
Yeah.
I love learning one of my favorite quotes, unknown, be willing to give up who you are today for who you could become tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that mindset, not the quote, because I don't walk around like saying to my wife, because
that would be funny.
Well, she reads that, I'd be dead, right? You would find me like with an arrow in my fucking brain. Because people, if you share that to somebody at the wrong time in their life, it's the exact same thing as saying, you need to change, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really the problem with somebody who says, you're a Glauer fanboy. What I hear when you talk about the system and our relationship, what I hear is that conversation made me a better human.
Yep.
It made me think that, and that's what you want. And that's what we need to surround ourselves with that all the time. And it's one of the things I was talking to Elisa before the podcast. I said, like, my nervous system lately that I've and I know what's going on. Like I'm constantly, I'm looking at Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, and it's like I'm eating so much shit.
Yeah.
There's so much shit out there that you don't know what's true, what's not. And I'm at my heart, and we're the same here, man. I'm sad for humanity. I'm sad for the world. Yeah. I feel like we've peaked as a civilization, and now it's like nobody gives a shit.
Yeah. And but if we have two men who do give a shit, who are making verbal and physical acts to keep the balance from, because right now,
who are they? Send me their names.
Yeah. It's you and me, retard. Okay. I honestly, it's if I start thinking about how bad our society has become, I'm going to give you a perfect. Hold on, pause. I was in an airport and not long ago, and there was a woman, and I never look at the TV screens when I'm in an airport. Like I try to get a headphone on as quick as possible so I don't have any kind of nonsense that's being played around me. And I don't know why. I was listening. I was diving into it. And I was getting angry. And I looked at this woman, and she had to be, 80, so just a few years younger than you. And and I looked over at her and I said, I can't believe how bad we've screwed things up. And she looked at Tony, I'll never forget her. She goes, oh, sugar. She goes, you guys have it so good right now. You don't understand. You have it so good. And I must have looked like she punched me in the face, because I was like, what? How can you say that? And she just kind of put her hand on my knee and she goes, honey, you guys have it really good. And it really was, I think it was just so important to have some different perspective, because I was swallowing all the nonsense that I'm being fed. And then it made me think about, there's a guy in the woods right now who doesn't know how bad the world is. Right? We should be in the best time of our species, and we're allowing a bunch of little pieces of shit to completely ruin the reservoir of water. We've got this beautiful glacial water, and we're allowing 3 people who had some diarrhea and in one section completely ruin the fact that we're going to drink from this water anymore because of this, instead of just cleaning out the nonsense. And I am sad. Like I'm talking tough right now because I'm hyped up. But the last 3 days I have been feeling well, and I purposely have just been trying to stay offline because of the fact that when you said weaponized, you're not joking, man. there's things that we would take for granted. I'm going even just into doggy videos. Like Instagram is fantastic. If I hit a couple things and they'll just keep feeding me stuff.
Right.
But now I hit a bunch of the doggy things and then they'll slide in some bullshit. And it amazes me how quickly, if you even happen to view it, the search engine or the AI will sit there and just keep feeding you stuff. And we're not that bad, because you know what? There's two of us who can see that there is brightness in this shitty planet that we're on. It's not a shitty planet. It just has shitheads in it. And they're just really loud.
The problem, and I know this can open up multiple Pandora's boxes, but the memes that went around during the last few years, the one of if you were wondering whether you would have complied in World War II, now you know, right? And it's I think that's the sadness is back. So what now? We know that the government, big tech, our Justice Department are working together. I mean, these are facts. I mean, I just saw the thing, and where Twitter releasing all the files, and then the FBI, releasing a watch out for disinformation. Yeah. Even though, what are you talking about? But you read that, and your brain wants to go insane. I mean, you just. So I think the problem I have, everything you're saying is right, and if you called me up and said, okay, but let's go, okay, let's go, but the amount of control that we've allocated over the last 30, 40 years, that it's just so brazen. But let's not turn this too much into a political thing. And because at the end of the day, if you're listening to this and you're getting part of the message here is no one's coming to save you. Yeah. And you need to be mentally fit, not just physically fit. And if you can't manage the fear, you're not going to manage to fight. And the operative word there is to fight, or words, because people think that whether it's no fear or whatever approach you're doing to mental fitness guarantees victory. It doesn't, but it does guarantee dignity. Yep. Because you will have permission to fight, and you'll be fighting for what you believe in, which is the main thing here.
And you won't have any guilt or shame or anything that comes afterwards, because you know what? You did the best you got with what you had. There's nothing. The worst thing that I've seen, and I've felt it in my own self, when I didn't do what I thought I should have done, and because I was afraid. Right. Right. And what did you say? Mental, dang it, what'd you call it? You said mental fitness. Or
physical fitness for mental fitness. Yeah.
A person who is working on their mental fitness, imagine if we just took 15% of the population and we just tuned in their mental fitness so that things like, mental health, right? We have mental health awareness. If we were to alter people's perceptions on some things and strengthen and make aware of their mental fitness, it would completely change a lot of the things that we got going on. And I think that the conversation of you and I having, and my conversation with people as we go out, you conversing and people other conversing, the more conversing we can have to let them know that being afraid is not, you're not a pussy. Okay. Fear is a natural thing that we have in our lives. And instead of shutting down, here's your options. Here's some choices that you can make so that fear will not negatively control you.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the more subtle but empowering parts of the No Fear program, is that we didn't make it all pedantic and academic and and psychobabble, that it was all, it's really like, hey, you got a bad movie in your mind, you gotta step out of that theater. You're the producer, you're the director, you've cast yourself as victim number one in the horror movie in your mind. Fucking leave the theater. And then telling people it's okay to be afraid. There are things in life you need to do afraid. Hence the fuck fear acronym on the back wall there. Fuck it, face it, understand it, control it, know it. I want to do a little, this is a deep and meaningful talk, but I want to shift gears a little bit. But before we do, one of our affiliates, Coach Brent in Australia, who's also a boxing coach, former law enforcement, he asked this question: how do we as coaches shift the younger mindset that their loss of their phone is their biggest fear because their lives are so intrinsically entwined with devices? I don't have a fucking answer for that. I'll put you on the spot. You got any thoughts on?
Well, I don't know necessarily if I have anything. If your phone is the most important thing, again, a lot of it has to do with perspective, right? It has to do with making them aware of the fact that there is something also to be maybe of equal importance. And if, like, we're never going to get rid of the phone, never. That door is never going to open again. So instead, why don't we just sit there and say, okay, your phone is important, and instead of diminishing what's important to them, shedding light on what should also be of importance, and let them evolve at the time that they're going to evolve by giving them choices.
So what you're saying is that, Brent, I think you need to have all the parents who are asking you about this buy their kids an iPad too, so that they have. Is that what you're saying?
You're an idiot. No.
So, but you're right, because I run my business off of this.
Same.
Right. So, but is there a way to and it's crazy because I've been at my dinner table where I'm there, my kids are there, my wife is there, and everyone's got their phone at the table, just like a fucking fork and a knife and a spoon and an iPhone. And I've tried to, hey, let's not have our phones at the table, let's do this. And it's just there. I think part of it, it's, we can't train humans like we can train dogs.
No.
But I think what you were going at, and this is what my head was doing, and it is that it's like the Gandhi thing: be the change, right? And so if you demonstrate and Brent, I'm just trying to think of an example that would be generic for everybody. So you got somebody who's on their phone, and you got a kid that won't pay attention, and you go, hey, do me a favor, could you Google this definition for me? Dad wants to do that. And you create a conversation where they need to use this.
Yes.
They can't. They've got to then
interact.
Yes. Eventually, like that'll shift, because I think that what's missing and why the world is so easily, I forget who said this, but it was some nerdy artificial intelligence wizard or writer who said that humans have been hacked, that we're the most easily hacked, right? And that we've been hacked, and we've been hacked by big tech. And it's recognizing that and going, okay, how do I now, guys, let's everyone look here. Everyone take your phone now and do this. Find this thing of violence here, then talk to me about it. Okay. Look at this picture of the fear loop. Okay. Now talk to me what you're thinking, and find a way. And when people start
to merge them
to that they enmesh, they become cooperative, because you'll never have the type of, you said this, like you like going to live events. You will never have that three-dimensional chemistry that you will in a, as good as this is. If you were sitting here in my office, it'd be worse.
Worse. Well, and I'm going to just say, I just want to remind people that this phone issue isn't new. It's been building for 15 years or so. I mean, when you and I got those Motorola's, the bricks, the ones you could hit somebody and still talk at $2 a minute, it's easy for, I don't know, I'm not going to speak for you. It's easy for me to sit there and be like, look, guys, these phones are going to kill you. They're just of no use. But that's unfair because of the fact that that's their language. That is their world.
Right.
To diminish it, it's just going to have alienation away from it. So like your suggestion, which was, I think, brilliant, well, maybe not brilliant, but pretty smart, was find a language that they're going to understand and then bring them in. And I do believe, I have to have faith in the fact that if we show attention, positive attention to a subject, that if we don't berate them and shove shit down their throat, that over time we can alter how their perception is and how they take in information. Right. And beating your child, smacking them. I know we make jokes about, it was better back in the 60s and 70s because you could hit somebody. But the truth is our pendulum is swinging all the time to one direction or the other direction. If it would ever just freeze for a little bit in the middle, we would make gargantuan growth as a species. Now, I understand that that's airy-fairy. It's never going to happen because the swings are, as human beings, it's just what we do to screw things up is we swing one direction or the other. But my job would be to sit there and find that middle ground and nurture that middle ground so that they can make decisions at least on their own without being influenced negatively. I don't know what I just said, but it sounded smart.
I don't know. It was good. It was good. I heard that you're a swinger. Something about that.
Yeah. Well, right. Only with you though.
Right. Okay. Let's shift because probably a lot of people logged in to hear us talk about fighting and violence, stuff like that.
Okay.
And we've been like talking about touchy-feely and this stuff.
All right, hold on. But I'm ready. I have something violent. I'm ready. Go ahead.
What the hell? Is that a Batman?
Yeah, they're actually you can throw them and they'll leave an imprint. But I just wanted because we said violence, so let's get into
Ask me about Batman. Right. Okay, got it. So let's kick this off. Well, I'm going to hold off on Jack's. Jack's got a question, but let's not pop that up yet. What got you into martial arts? When did you start? This is like rapid fire now. So
okay. I was 10 years old and I was a shitty athlete. I really was a shitty athlete. Didn't have any kind of coordination and I was getting my ass kicked. So I ended up going to take some Kung Fu, which as you know, didn't help me do anything else. But that was my escape from being useless and all those other things. Because at least with this thing, I could get some kind of empowerment from it.
Okay, cool. So you were bullied as a kid?
Yep.
Okay. Did you ever go down the competition road? Did you compete?
Yep. In forms and sparring and in the early days, in the early 80s, it was a lot of like forms, wushu, fancy kung fu stuff. And in the 90s, I was taking a Wei Chi Ru, which is an Okinawan system, and it was a lot more body conditioning. And we just went into tournaments just to get knocked people out.
Where'd you live back then?
Vancouver, BC.
Okay. Right on. Canadian boy.
One of the guys I trained just sent me a message saying he was one of your original students in Montreal.
Really?
Yeah.
Should we mention his name?
I'll have to do it offline because I don't remember his full name.
Okay. Interesting. He lives in Vancouver?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But he was from Montreal and he'd go back and forth, but now he's in Vancouver.
Okay. Did you get your ass kicked when you're a bully? Like you ever get like
all the time? Yeah, okay. Really shitty beatings.
Okay.
And the swirlies.
Emotional, psychological.
Huge.
Awful. Okay. When did you realize you wanted to teach self-defense?
I never did. I fought it. I fought this subject. I think I've been fighting it every single time because I just didn't think I was good enough. Still. Yep.
Okay. I'm going to book a private session with you.
Yeah. Well, now, before you go any further, just remember when you told me in the last time we talked, remember the look back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it took me a little bit of time to go and do that. And when I finally did that, I was shaking my head, and I actually had tears in my face. I was like, Tony, you son of a, that was probably the most monumental impacting that as an adult. Well, probably I would say my entire life, because of the fact that it showed, you know what, I have a reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I do bring value to what I'm doing. So, but to answer your question, I think that that's a stumbling block. Now, maybe not so much now. Now I have things, I use my life experiences to assist me in giving people options.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten rid of have tos, right? Like I've said that once before, and it's important that I make it clear. The only thing you have to do is, I want you to have to want to survive the attack, because I think you as a human being deserve the fact to stand up to your fear and your violence and smile, even though you're missing teeth, and do whatever you can to hurt them back, because they're trying to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be the bullying, like getting beaten up as a little kid. That might be coming out as we're having this conversation, just as a
maybe just a little bit.
Dr. Phil moment.
Right. It's interesting, your answer. I got to think about that. I'll hit you up offline, with that. But was there? So, do you remember when you taught your first class? Was it?
Yep.
Was it?
Yep, I do. I was a brown belt or maybe even a green belt in the style of karate that I was taking. And my business partner, who was one of my karate instructors, said, "Hey, I can't make it. I need you to teach a class." I said, "Are you retarded? I'm not doing that." And I taught it. And then I ended up buying the school off of him and trying to teach a class, which really all I'm doing is copy paste, right? My instructor does this, so I'm just going to do that, that's just the way that it was. And I fought tooth and nail when I would teach. I would get like belligerent. I remember saying, "If you don't like it, you can leave." Right? Because I'm insecure and I'm scared, and you're a stupid head, like I'm basically a 5-year-old. F you, right? But I haven't actually thought about that. That was a lot of years ago, but feels like yesterday now.
That's wild. Do you remember where you were when Bruce Lee died? Were you into martial arts at the time?
No, I was just, because I was 73, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so 69. I hadn't started yet. I was only about 5 or 6 years old. I mean, you were like 20 or something by then.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Next question. Besides me, who's your martial art hero? Do you have a martial art hero? Do you like the word hero? Somebody that motivates and inspires you?
No, not really. No. Okay. Because most of the people that I'm getting the best amount of my knowledge has nothing to do with combatives. There's so many. I mean, there's a lot of really great people out there that are educating and teaching, but nobody that's really feeding what's necessary. And it's not that I can't learn. Like BJJ, perfect example. Any jiu-jitsu. Am I a big fan of it? Not really. Is it because I don't know very much about it? Maybe. Mostly it's because of the fact that every time I've curb stomped somebody or seen somebody curb stomp, there was no getting back up. So I have this block. So I purposely am going to sit there and have to get on the ground doing some jiu-jitsu so I can get rid of that ignorance. I'm going to consider it ignorance because I'm possibly losing out on something from my toolbox, right? But I do have I don't get inspired by a lot of things in the combatives industry, usually.
Fair enough. Like for me, watching Bruce Lee move.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Inspired me to really explore body mechanics and movement and control of my body.
Right.
Watching Sugar Ray Leonard.
Oh, Marvin Hagler.
But so I loved Hagler, but Leonard, I could see Leonard watching the violence differently, and I could be into that. So
yeah.
I think you probably have some heroes, you just don't realize it.
And to be honest with you, as soon as you said it, all of a sudden there becomes a blank, right? Like
you are old, so you've lost.
I am. That's
memory.
True. Yeah.
So I'm just talking about like spiritual guides where you just suddenly you're like down a rabbit hole with somebody. Or I used to watch when I grew up in Montreal during my real boxing phase. I would go for a run every morning, and then I'd come back and I'd have a bowl of oatmeal and a coffee and watch old boxing films. And I used to watch Sugar Ray Robinson over and over again and watch him move. And I couldn't help if I got up to go to the bathroom, pause the VHS, or go get another cup of coffee. I'd be up and I'd be moving and jabbing around on my way to the kitchen. And but I consider like those people like icons in my when I would visualize stuff. I'd be like, if I had a guy in front of me and I was Sugar Ray Robinson, how would I move right now?
Right.
I was exploring movement and strategy and thinking through all of that. I don't think you understood the question. I'm going to give you a C.
Well, that's fair enough. But it does bring to attention one thing. This is the biggest difference between you and I. And it's obvious that this has been for a long time. When you got information from something like Bruce Lee, perfect example, you'd be like, wow, look at how he moves and how he does things. I look at Bruce Lee and I'm enamored with his showmanship, right? Like, wow. And, it wasn't until many years later that, you got to see different versions of what Bruce Lee was about. I'm writing an article for Skill Set, and one of the top movie fight scenes or whatever, and one of them is the beginning of Enter the Dragon, because of the simplicity of how he handled that situation with Sammo Hung. There's so much in that 2-minute fight scene that we should take away from of thinking out of the box, doing violent actions.
Also interesting for 1973, that he was using grappling like that.
Yeah.
Way before.
Yeah. He was. I mean, you can't be a martial artist and of any generation and not say that Bruce Lee is by far the single most impactful individual in the martial arts realm. You can't. There's nobody that can say it. They'd be liars.
They'd be stupid. Okay. Yeah. Pet peeve about the martial art or self-defense industry.
You have to do this. It's the only thing that'll work.
Mm-hmm.
It pisses me off because of the fact that with the vast majority of different body types and mental capacities and challenges, I don't want to hear that they have to do this, and that if they don't do this, they're going to fail miserably. Nope. Options. Got to have options.
If there was no more violence in the world, you and I would be out of a job.
Nope.
Okay.
I don't believe it. I believe that with fear management, while if there's no more violence, that's great, but there will always be fear because of us as human beings, how we're made. There will always be fear, and so I would have a job for the rest of my life.
So that was my question. If there was no more violence, what would you do? This is kind of a weird thing.
Yep.
But it's, I think you can handle it. What would you change about the world? If you could wave a magic wand.
I would change so that we had more grace and compassion. Good. We would have a completely different planet if that happened.
Agree. Okay, man, that was kind of. I wanted to slip Jack's question in there before that because that got all spiritual there. Let's go back to. Are you still deeply involved with Krav?
No, I am still close with my instructor, right? My former boss, but not really. And I don't think that's necessarily by design. It's just I'm life. Yeah. Everybody moves forward. The minute I said I retired, it was like, okay, cool, excellent. And then that machine's got to keep going. Right. And I'm cool with that.
So we won't spend a lot of time on this out of respect for all that, but Elisa, pump Jack's question up there, please. This is to you. He believes Wise Crow's struggling in the U.S. and doing well outside the U.S.
Okay, I think the truth is and it's not just a Krav Maga thing. I think it's just the culture of the United States is probably, there's just way more bickering in the United States. People bitching and complaining about this is better. You must do this. Don't tell me what to do this. And in other parts of the world, they're just a little more tolerant of, okay, what's the rules and regulations? Okay, I'll follow those rules and regulations. And there's a little more loyalty, I would say, from my experience in the Krav Maga world. There's more loyalty out of America than there is in America. Because in America, they're like, okay, I'll get my thing. It's now Marcus's Krav Maga school, and I don't care about my affiliation, or I don't care about this. I just want to take the information, do what I need to do with it, and make my money. That's my observation over the last 15, 16 years in Krav Maga.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, let me think if there's anything else. Is there anything that we're going to get off and you're going to go, fuck, I wanted to talk about this? Was there something that you wanted to bring up or talk or share?
Well, only that I've said it a little bit. I want to say it again, so maybe you'll hear me in your good ear. More, I want live venue, no fear weekend workshops.
Okay.
I know, I understand why. I understand the mechanics of why. But there's just so many people who are not getting the information.
Yep.
And it's
you're right. It's and I make the joke. I don't know if I make it in the digital seminar, but I make it when I do my live gigs. I go, fear management needs a new management because people just aren't getting it. They're like, if you're type A, male or female, you don't want to talk about fear because it's like, no, I'm not afraid. I'm good. We don't want to talk about it, so we protect from it. But we don't realize that we can turn fear into fuel very easily.
Yeah.
And to paraphrase Customato, he talked about how, fear can warm your house and cook your food.
Yeah.
But if it's out of control, how to harness it, it'll burn your house down and it'll burn you.
There's a guy that I Customato. There you go. When it comes to people that I've listened to or I look and I'm like, wow, man, first of all, I would love to have met Customato. That's one person who I can say, what a treat that would have been to be around him. Even near the last years, there's a guy that inspires me to become better just by watching him and listening to him, Yeah. But yeah, no fear. It's what's funny is I had to do a gig in Minnesota. I had some people helping me with rebranding and all that. And they said, well, what do you want to do? And I wanted to stay away from fear management only because of the fact that like fear management, no fear, Tony Blauer. Like I just kind of put them all together. Whether it is true or not, that's how I envision it. And I didn't want to ride on coattails. So we came up, or was there a weekend? We could not find, and some of the things that they came up with, I'm like, oh my God, that's fear guide and whatever. Dealing with fear is the single most important thing for the rest. As many days as I get left in my lifetime, whether I get tomorrow or 30 years, the rest of my life is only going to be about fear management. That's it. That's all I want to talk about to anybody on all podcasts, I bring it up. I want everybody to not acknowledge me as the Krav guy, which, you know, I'm a victim of my own success on that one, because that's what I worked hard to be doing.
Right.
But if people can just sit there and when they think of me, be like, fear, and not be negatively influenced by the word.
Yeah.
You know,
that's the tricky one. And that's actually, you know, my mission is to get people to realize, like, if we can get people to see fear almost like it's a gasoline pump and it says regular,
yeah,
you know, fucking premium,
right.
and it's just like, I'm using this as a fuel. I use, when I get a fear spike right away, it depending on what's triggering it, it immediately is a message to me to go deep and introspect.
I got to work on something. Yeah.
And that's, okay, what's going on there? I just felt butterflies. I just felt parasympathetic to sympathetic. What's going on? And then I'll, again, depending on the scenario, because some shit is, you better move now. There's a reason.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. And that's what I'm working on. And I'm hesitating to say this live because we're recording this, but entertain the idea of talking to me about working more directly with me, so you don't have to figure out ways to say things that you were inspired to think because of me, without going, well, how do I say this without using Tony's language? Because I can't do this. This is reminiscent of in the 80s when I got a phone call from a guy in Jersey saying, I want to get certified in your system. And I said, well, you live in New Jersey and I live in Montreal. Like, unless you move here, how do you get certified in my system?
Right.
I never thought about like, how do I scale this? How do what are the essential ingredients so that someone else to force multiply,
you
know, whoever I can teach, like, and that's why I've got an affiliate program, right? We've got people in the world.
Yeah.
But there's something that we'll talk offline.
Well, and I want to make sure that, because, and I brought this up in the past, so, and I'm not trying to poke and open things, but remember the people that regarding high gear. Okay. I've said this, I might not have said it to you, but I've said it in the past. I don't ever want to be ever a person who sits there and gets all the good stuff and then magically comes up with their own thing, even though they took 99% of something. And that's why I'm a big believer in giving props to wherever what didn't come from my brain, then I'm going to give it where I got it from. And that's why I said about the live action situations, you know, whatever you put on, I'm going to support, because it's important to my development as a human being, not as a instructor, not as a, you know, anything in the combatives world. As a human being, I need to know more about no fear, because it makes me a better human being. And that is what the message I want everybody to understand. It'll make you a better human being and be able to sit there and deal with violent interactions better.
Dig it. Okay.
Can you dig it?
What's the best place for people to reach you, man? We got your website.
Yeah, the website is good, but the Instagram is, you know, Instagram is by far I'm on Facebook as well, but Instagram seems to be just the platform at this moment that is the easiest one to deal with. Right on.
Dig it. We've talked a lot about no fear. I know Lisa put together a nice graphic for the no fear. Let's just stick it up there so people can look at that and maybe pop the link if anyone's interested in it. So this is
nice. Yes.
This is it. Now, this program is a digital program. It's the original PowerPoint slide deck with me narrating digital audio as if you were in the class. You couldn't take notes. You couldn't ask questions. But go to that page, getnofear.com, and I'll tell you this. Man. I had a guy, I'm not going to mention his name because it was a personal text to me, but he sent me a text after. He says, hey, I've never told anybody this, but several years ago, I started developing kind of mild anxiety, and I just never shared it with people. I just never knew what I was worrying about. And he said, I did your no fear program, and then I did it again, made pages of notes. And then I realized, like, about a week after that, my anxiety had gone away. And he was asking me in this text, he says, like, is that possible? And I answered him, I said, well, if I was your therapist, it's not possible because I need to see you next week.
I need money. Yeah.
Right. And listen, there are great therapists out there that do wonderful things. And in fact, I mentioned like Jeff DeTesso using our system, and he is although he's using it in a broad way, he's got a special love and passion bias for helping vets with PTSD, and he's using it there. And so this isn't me making fun of therapists, but at the end of the day, it's on you. We need to be self-sufficient at the end of the day. We can have the cavalry can rush in and help, but if we had the skills to manage, and it's not the violence, it's the fear first. Yeah. The first place we are hit in any violent confrontation, I use violence because if you are visualizing your demise financially, health, relationship, those are violent thoughts.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do with the literal violence, the physical violence.
No.
So if you want to improve your self-awareness, if you want to improve your critical thinking skills, if you want to improve your situational awareness, then understanding how to read a fear spike is the fastest pathway to that. And that's what No Fear is about.
Yeah.
Buddy, so good to catch up and connect again. It was great. We'll have you back on again.
Right on. Excellent. I'm going to sit there and bring I'm going to send you a jacket, just whatever they wore in that Muppets thing, because they wore specific things. I'm just going to find them and I'll send you one. And then I'm going to wear the other one. Cause
go to a thrift shop and go find some old, dude, continued success. Hang on a little bit after we end the show. And Elise, is there anything else that we need to do, or are we good? For all of you who logged in, thank you. We're going to reshare this, of course, through Spotify, Apple, and all the other, I think we're on 10 or 12 different platforms. When it goes out, please share with your friends. Please let people know about this. I think Marcus's message is very important for people, whether you're booking him or training him. I think his message to all humanity, understanding fear and learning to navigate it, particularly in light of the direction the world's going in. Yeah. To revisit that fear has been weaponized in the biggest way to control behavior. And the only way that you will stay sane is if you can recognize that and go, oh, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And then figure out ways to intercept that.
Yeah.
Okay, buddy. Be safe.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you, man.